Hello everyone, and warm welcome again to another video. This is Dan Pendergraft, aka DPend, and I want to thank everybody who commented on the last video. I appreciate that support very much and glad that everything went well. So today's topic I want to address is going to be thinking for yourself, thinking for oneself. And what does it mean to think for yourself? Why is it important? Why should anyone want to do it? What are the downsides to it as well? And what is the main reason why we see so few people becoming free thinkers and instead largely conforming to some type of societal, ideological, dogmatic, religious, and various norms, including, of course, the fervor in which modern empirical science is believed in, with that intensity of faith that people possess. Where does that come from, and how can we become more free thinkers? And again, I do glance down at notes because it just helps me stay on topic. So I wrote down a few main points here in this category. Now, why am I qualified to talk about this subject? Well, I would consider myself to be someone who continually likes to explore truth and achieve that willful suspension of conclusion so that it is a sort of comfortable discomfort in which one always holds all conclusions in a sort of abeyance. That means that you're always exploring. You do not come to a point to say, oh, this is the conclusion, I know something for sure. The main thing to realize is that truth itself, with a capital T, the actuality of what is not something that is able to be found in the realm of intellection or thinking. That is a very sort of moot statement. A lot of people would not consider it that necessarily deep, but really language in which our minds are programmed from a young age is functioning in a symbolic manner. It's metaphorical, approximative of reality. It only ever asymptotically reaches towards that actual truth because our sense organs are extremely limited. We can only see a very, very minute portion of the energetic spectrum that is called the visible light spectrum. Most of what is in reality is invisible to us, which is why there have always been mythologies, sciences, arts and sciences that drive us towards the discovery of greater realms which we cannot perceive with the sense organs. And we're also burdened with a brain that has been conditioned to thousands of years of animal instinct. In the womb, a child retraces in the gestational process, the evolutionary process, or the sort of upwards aspiration process of the organism from an amphibian to a reptile to a mammalian, and we arrive towards the human. You can see this in the stages of the fetus. So we operate with these extreme constraints on our ability to cognize truth. And most people are looking within the realm of thought because it is not really well understood how the faculty of intuition and gnosis, spontaneous knowing, can arise that doesn't have the stamp of empirical truth, but these leaps of insight are typically what lead to scientific discoveries where the empiricism of testing these intuitions bears out and says that there is some substance to this intuition, this leap of insight that a scientist has had. The mind is an unbelievable servant, but it's a terrible master. And the majority, first, do not really train their mind to be very keen. And the ones that do, most of them, are also ruled by their own mind instead of the mind serving their higher aspirations and the integrity of their being in its fullest extent. So we have an incredible tool. However, the training and consistent employment of that is something that's basically a challenge worthy of an entire lifetime, and part of the reason why we're here. Another very important thing to realize as a prerequisite to becoming a freer thinker or thinking for oneself is to understand that we are not our thoughts. We are not synonymous with our thoughts. We are not equivalent to our thoughts. For instance, if one has an extremely disturbing thought or a very offensive thought, there is typically guilt and shame that follows this. Yet there is the capacity to free oneself from this overly volatile emotionality that we feel towards the nature of our thoughts. When we comprehend that the sum total of our emotions, the mind, and everything that we think of as ourselves, including our personality, our appearance, our physical body, all of those things added together is still much less than what we are, because what we are is something that we cannot comprehend the extent of. And the reason why that's pertinent to this topic is because understanding that, not just believing that or comprehending that on an intellectual level, but actually coming to know this truly beyond the shadow of a doubt, is extremely freeing, because it means if we are not equivalent with our thoughts, it's okay if our thoughts are less than perfect, if our comprehension is less than perfect. It means that we can fail, and we can fail meaningfully, and that's extremely important. Along with that, it is good, although uncomfortable, to realize the myth of the stable personality. This idea that we wake up and we're the same, and if we're one way, oh, I'm just shy, or I'm very good at math. All of these beliefs that we have about ourselves, we have to realize that we're just an amalgamation of these near infinite states of spontaneity in which energy is passing through all these permutations, and then what we see is this persistent illusion of stability in a personality, in a person. And particularly when other people perceive us, they perceive us as a rather stable personality, because the brain is naturally wanting to pick up on patterns. So anything that it can define as part of the person known as X program in the mind, it will do so. And it does that for a very good reason, because it's a compression faculty of the brain to be able to compress all of this multidimensional information into one tiny packet called the name of a person, and then it can recall this. However, that's something like a zip file on a computer, so it's a compressed version of the truth, but on the higher level, we're not always the same thing. We're constantly going through an evolution from day to day, from minute to minute, from second to second, and then on the levels of years, decades, etc. And comprehending that, it's very easy to see why it would be folly to hold the exact same belief, have the same old thoughts over and over, and to only stay within one narrow track for one's entire earthly existence. At the same time, there is a comfort and stability that people feel when they stagnate themselves into one stable pattern. So the upside of being not a free thinker is that you don't have to expend very much energy in order to be actively thinking, actively investigating. And of course, the downside to it is that you perhaps don't unlock the full potential of what you can achieve as a human being. Thinking freely means asking questions, and also realizing that questions are somewhat useless, and that the answer is contained within the question. For instance, the question why is not capable of being answered in any meaningful manner when the real answer is that because everything that has ever occurred within all time and that will ever occur within all time is the reason, and there is no other. So the fact that questions are, quote unquote, flawed or useless means that the answer is contained within it. So thinking freely means asking questions, realizing they're based on a limited understanding, seeing that the answer is contained with a clear enough stated question. Often the answers to questions cannot be found because the question is not stated clearly and it's not understood clearly. Asking that and exploring that continuously is helpful for just gaining skill in that process. And that helps you train the faculty of examining data while not coming to a final conclusion, an irreversible conclusion. And this feeling of coming to a stuck place or an irreversible place is often the result of having an emotional attachment to a particular dogmatic stance, that you define yourself based off of certain belief structures that if they are altered or relinquished, one would feel that one's entire security is being whisked away. And that provides a lot of seeming stability during daily life. So it's no wonder why people have a hard time thinking freely with that discomfort that comes as an old belief structure melts away and a new tenuous structure arises in its place, and that continuously happens over and over until we reach the end of our experience here. So what's basically required is that you embrace the sweet loneliness, the existential poignancy of thinking for yourself, because it means that no one will think exactly like you. And it's been said that we feel the same way, we feel alike, but we think differently. So there's a strong tendency, because of how social we are and how much we value others' opinions and thoughts and feelings and esteem and validation, that we attempt to think like others, but it's futile, because we are all here to bring a very unique characteristic forth with regards to our creative drives, of which thought is the primary expression. It is a creative faculty. And if we attempt to create like someone else, anyone else, no matter how much we admire them, we are doing ourselves and the broader humanity a disservice. So I believe that will conclude our exploration of some of the merits of thinking for oneself, some of the downsides, and just a few points along the way to sort of guide us along. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, share it, and definitely weigh in the comments. Leave your opinion and your insights and your reflections on anything that we talked about today, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and I will see you again soon.